Good evening. I'm going to call the meeting to order at 6 o'clock. All righty. All right, we're going to start with roll call. Unfortunately, Stuart Lander cannot be with us tonight, but we send our greetings to Stuart. So Brad Shear.
Here.
Paula Whitford.
Yeah.
Michelle Brousseau.
Here.
Kate Massanani.
Here.
James Restivo.
Here.
And I myself am here. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, that'll bring us to comments from the community. Mary? You represent the entire community. Nothing. Okay, moving along. All right, next up is the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
That motion passes. And up next, superintendent report. So I will turn that over to the superintendent.
Madam Chair, good evening, everyone. In this evening's superintendent report, we have our standing personnel report, which is for informational only. Discuss a little bit of some of the blizzard impact, both that are known and yet some still unknown, and then mirroring what went out in the families and caregivers update is survey works that is now begun statewide and our push within the district. So next slide, please. Pardon? I will make sure. Next slide, please. So before you, we have the leave of absence as well as the interim director of facilities and operations. Obviously, those are two items that came out at our last meeting and will be before you once again this evening. We then also have a special education teacher and a grade 5 teacher, and those effective dates are posted before you. Next slide, please. So the blizzard impact, although the weather would never, is the furthest thing away right now from a blizzard. Thank you to Mother Nature for taking care of that. The main thing on everybody's mind is the existing school year calendar. We are still waiting for the Council of Elementary and Secondary Education to either accept or reject the recommendation of the commissioner, specifically regarding the 2 days in which there were states of emergency. I cannot recommend that this body take any action until we know what that recommendation is, as well as what our leeway is or options are. I am in conversations with both our SKESP as well as NEASC union leadership regarding calendars moving forward, as well as then we did have some contractual parameters in Council 94 as well when there are states of emergency, but and people being able to get to work but not being able to get to work. Obviously, given the historic conditions, we're trying to provide as much flexibility as possible while keeping teaching and learning at the forefront. So I'm hopeful that at our next meeting, not at the joint meeting, but at the one after that, that I will have a recommendation for you. Similarly, our state testing windows, the commissioner has indicated that they will be looking to see, especially that I believe it will be easier with RICAS and NGS the NGSS or the science assessment, because those are windows we control. They're not national windows. However, she did indicate that she's looking to provide an extra week if possible by working with vendors. And if that is the case, we will look to take advantage of that to make sure that as much instruction can occur before those state assessments are taken. And then in some not great news, but also some good news, we are vigorously giving our submissions to the district's insurance agent, the trust. They've been fantastic thus far for any leaks or ice dams or collapses that have happened. We are filing, and again, the worst they can say is no. But my thanks to Mr. Adams as well as Mrs. Proctor for doing the district's due diligence to make sure that, again, given the premiums that we pay for, as well as, again, the historic nature and the need for our facilities for us to keep those in as best shape as we can, that is something that is ongoing. I would also like to take this moment to, again, publicly thank and give appreciation to all of our faculty, staff, administrators, custodians, maintenance staff, everyone, transportation, everybody who worked behind the scenes to get schools up and ready as soon as we were able. Also, a big thank you to the town and all of the associated departments. My thanks to Town Manager Manny for being so receptive. So when the Ocean State did their dry run, when they told us about certain things that were blocking the way, that was communicated back to DPW. They took that to heart. And again, a yeoman, it takes a village, and they gave it to us. And so again, our sincere thanks, especially again to all the people who, all the things that we take for granted, the internet, the computer, the walkways, things that until they're broken or not working, we tend to not recognize and then go, what are you doing? They were doing stuff constantly. And again, my thanks to them. Next slide, please. Survey Works. Survey Works began from the state in January. However, we want to narrow down our window. We don't want to we want to make sure that we're staying true to our core value of voice, both from our students and in our community. And so, but if we, take Survey Works and extend it too long, or if we're always reopening windows, people then tend to ignore it because I can just get to it another day, or I'll get to it. And at the same time, we also don't want to keep on sending out text messages or emails, blasts to people where it's like, I've taken it already, enough. So we've chosen to focus our efforts to the month of March for Survey Works to make that concerted effort in our outreach to the community. All students will be given time in class, and I believe that each building's faculty will also be given faculty meeting time to complete Survey Works, so that we can have those robust results and participation rates that we're looking for. Because not only do we use Survey Works as a actual metric in our strategic priorities and goals, but they extend throughout. I would argue that we can find meaningful information for us to look for areas to both celebrate and find areas to improve, regardless of whether it's in the strategic plan or not. So if any community members are out there and you have not heard from and gotten your code yet for Survey Works, please reach out and we will make sure to get you the link and your school's code for where you send your children. And with that, I'll take any questions. And if there are no questions, that concludes my report this evening.
I took a look at the survey, and my interpretation from it was that it asked a lot of questions around IEPs and special education. And I wonder if that is intentional.
I'll have to look, because I believe that you will be routed if you answer in the affirmative. It will then direct you to questions versus someone who says if they do not have a child, or if they're not answering for a parent, guardian, or family that has one, that they're routing you to specific questions to ask you that others who say, no, I do not have a child receiving IEP services, that they would not see those.
So in other words, if I put I do not, it will generate other questions.
That's my understanding, and I can, yes, it would skip other questions because they wouldn't be relevant. They wouldn't be relevant to others' experiences whose children do not have IEPs.
Survey works is the same for every district in the state, right? We have no control over saying we want some questions and not others, or.
That is correct.
Okay.
Even when we did that in the dark ages, pencil and paper, there were questions in there that would say, if your answer to a question such and such is no, skip down to number such and such. Just clarify something for me, please, Mr. Pedraza. Are those of us like me with no children in the district supposed to do it as a community member or not?
Not to my knowledge. There
Okay.
is no code that because each code is linked to a specific school.
Okay, I didn't think so, but I wanted to double check. Thank you.
Thank you.
That brings up another question. If you have children in multiple schools, are you being asked to complete it twice?
Yes.
I don't remember if they're.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's listing high school, secondary, elementary, like high school, middle school, elementary.
No, so when I believe the link that we sent out to the community will allow you to select the school that your children go to. So it would be West Kingston, it would be Peacedale, it would be Broad Rock, or the high school. And then you would fill out a survey. So if you had a child at Peacedale and the high school, you would go to you would go to a link for each school. And then, at least for students, while they're dealing in similar bands of questions, some of the questions are age adjusted.
So that was my next question. What ages or grade levels participate in survey works?
In our elementary schools, it would be grades 3 and 5, and then 6 through 12. And then results are also when you go in, if you were to go into the platform or go onto rides, while the results are presented from a district point of view, it then, if you were to go under students, it goes elementary first, then secondary. And the more clicks you go in, the more disaggregated the data is able to become. Conversely, when we go in to analyze those results, we can pull it up by the results by the school, not just by the district, and so that we can take a look at each school's results, not just grade bands, although we can do that as well.
If there are no more questions, then I will entertain a motion to accept the superintendent report.
Make a motion to accept the superintendent's report.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. All right, that will bring us to number 5, school committee business discussion, left field presentation, Curtis Corner Middle School athletic field project update. Welcome.
The weather is turning and I'm back in South Kingstown. So this is the perfect place to be as soon as it gets warm. Don't have much to say tonight. It's nice to see all of you again today. Phil's going to be giving us an update on the Curtis Corner project, see where we are with some designs, and then we'll be asking for your review and approval tonight, Phil. Yeah, review and approval to submit SD to the Department of Education. Okay.
Thank you, Chris. Good evening, everyone. Go ahead to the next slide, please. All right, can you all see this? You're good on your screen? Okay, great. So, this may be the first time that I'm presenting to you all the current athletic complex at Curtis Corner. So I want to walk you through a lot of material that the building committee has gone through and that we have worked with our athletic consultants on to bring you up to speed. So there are some parameters. For example, the athletic fields are remaining at Curtis Corner Middle School. Curtis Corner Middle School is going to be completely demolished. The proposed location is the proximate location of the existing field. However, there are significant improvements to stormwater management so that you're not going to struggle with some of the legacy issues associated with that site currently. It is going to be an 8-lane track. The field surface will be a synthetic turf, and this part of the project does include site amenities such as lighting, bleachers, fencing, etc. This is part 2 of a 3-part project. Part 1 is the demolition of the building. Town council awarded that last evening. We expect mobilization on site within the next month, and that is anticipated to be about a 3-month process. Part 2 is this athletic field component, the track, the field, and all the site amenities that we're going to go over. And then part 3 is the final site improvements to that overall campus, including roadways and parking lots, etc. It is prudent at that time in part 3 to make sure we are staying future focused and planning for any other buildings that may be a part of that site, such as future locker rooms or other amenities for teams. So that will be coming in part 3, and we're working within the budget allocated, and at each step we get more and more definition. So it's all good, and I look forward to sharing that with you at the appropriate time. Next slide. So the track surface that we're going to be installing, I want to describe the basis of design for that. It is an encapsulated sandwich system. It has a life expectancy of about 10 to 12 years with proper maintenance. And the cost of this system does come at about a 10 to 15% premium. The way we have approached both the track and the field, imagine 3 different lanes, a good, a better, and a best. And this system that we've designed falls into that better, that middle category. Next slide. So why are we proposing this encapsulated system? It's because of its long-term durability, especially in the high wear zones at the starts and on the inside track. Its ability to retain its granulars longer over its life cycle. It is easier to maintain and has a proven longevity to it. And it does offer the best tolerance for high community use, which is anticipated here at this track. Next slide. But there are some important notes that everyone should be aware of. The asphalt component is the most critical part of the system. The drainage needs to be excellent, which is quite manageable. Regarding its maintenance, snow removal, for example, needs to be done carefully. The footwear needs to be proper. Routine cleaning, vacuuming is required. And it's important to keep in mind that RIDE will only pay for this system once. They will not reimburse to restore or replace this system in 10 to 12 years. Next slide. The basis of design for the field, which is a synthetic turf system, has a hybrid fiber, and that the infill is a blend of virgin rubber and sand in a particular proportion. We are proposing a shock pad to be placed underneath of the turf. And this shock pad is reusable over 2 life cycles of the turf. The turf expectancy is also about 10 to 12 years with maintenance. That shock pad will last 20 to 24 years. And the system that we have proposed is at a premium of about 15%. And again, in terms of good, better, best, this is kind of in the better lane. Next slide. The reason we did this is because the district does expect high weekly use of the field. We know that scheduling and tournaments, the demand will be high. And we do need a dependable all-weather playability surface to be able to accommodate boys and girls soccer, field hockey, lacrosse, football, etc. Next slide. And some important notes to keep in mind here as well. Drainage needs to be excellent. The injury research is mixed. For example, if someone were to say, well, why are we not using natural grass instead of turf? And there has been many studies, and there is no universal safer surface. Footwear is going to be critical again for activities on the field. To maintain the safest possible field, it will need to be groomed, combed, and yearly testing for shock impact. The health risks of recycled rubber, which is what we are not using. We're using virgin rubber, not recycled rubber. But in 2024, the EPA concluded that there was no conclusive evidence that a rubber infill posed a health risk. And again, similar to the track, RIDE will not reimburse replacement. So in 10 to 12, maybe pushing 13 years, there will be a significant reinvestment. We'll talk about the budget when we go through this. Next slide. So this is the proposed site plan of part 2. You see the field that's in the center. To the right of it is the long jump pits. To the top are the high jump pits and lanes. To the south, centered is the existing concession stand, so you can orient yourself. And flanking that, both to the right and to the left, will be new 500-seat each bleacher systems and a large plaza for activities and access. The track is 8 lanes. It does have a perimeter walkway. It is completely secured with fencing. It does have lighting, 2 and 2 on the top and bottom. And I have a series of images that we will go through just to give you an idea of what we're anticipating. Some of these we'll go through quickly because I think they're like 20 images, which look great, but we don't need to go through all of them. But some of them may spur a question, and we can certainly go back. So next slide, please.
Question real
Yes.
quick.
Yes.
So you talk about footwear. So what do you mean by footwear? Does it track you have to wear certain track shoes, correct?
Certain spikes, certain track shoes. The footwear for the turf is really going to prevent the student athletes from getting injured, right? If they don't have the right depth of spikes for their particular sport that they're playing. I am not well versed in that. But we want to explain to you all, and certainly your athletic directors and coaches understand that footwear matters. Chip, the principal at the high school, who is very influential, very involved in the track component to this.
So my question really is, kids that play football and other sports need to wear proper footwear with the cleats, but you don't want cleats on your track, correct? So how do they get across the track to the field?
Sure. So built into this design are going to be accessories that will help maintain the track, the field, and then the protection. You can wear certain spikes on the track for running. They have their own set of spikes. So typically, what I've seen is there are mats that are put across during football practice or season, and people traverse across that way.
So along those lines, right now, and I think in the future, the public has open access to the facilities, so generally, people are just gonna wear regular sneakers.
Yes.
But there are no concerns about, we just don't want people wearing like grass cleats out there, which most people aren't wearing anyway.
Correct.
So the idea also there would be a informational sign, right, that kind of says, but to your point, most people are going out there with sneakers. If somebody goes out there like one off and walks across the track with the wrong footwear, it's just you don't want the constant wear and tear of the wrong footwear. Yeah.
I also had a question about footwear, if you don't mind. Have you people installed these kinds of tracks and fields in other districts where there were restrictions on footwear and was it like adhered to by the community? Was it like,
Go ahead.
So,
I knew I probably wasn't asking Mr. Conti the correct question.
No, no, no.
Thank
No, so I just have very recent experience with this. We just did this exact same field project in Barrington. They chose the exact same stuff that you guys did as well. And so far there's been no issues with people wearing the wrong footwear. I think the way that we need to look about this is kind of as Kate said, we don't want the football team in their cleats running laps, right? Like we
Right.
don't want that to be part of their conditioning. But I think average people and things like this, we're going to be wearing tennis shoes like myself. I think that's more of what the worry is about this as opposed to the residents. I would think a sign would help. I would think it'd be very difficult to enforce. So I think asking maybe a sign that has some language about how this is a community resource. We want to keep it that way. Please wear the right footwear or we're going to have to, that's what Barrington did is they put a sign. You can't abide by the rules. We're going to have to close it.
I'd also like to add in here, like South Kingstown is late to the game with the track and the field. So I mean, you guys, I'm sure could list off multitude of high schools in our surrounding community that has this same system and has for quite a while. East Greenwich, Barrington, Narragansett, Prout. I don't know what Charahoe has, but I mean, it's commonplace and basically it's to the point where if we don't go with these systems, we are not competitive in the Rhode Island Interscholastic League anymore. So it is pretty common. And so if you're traveling elsewhere, it's basically exists at every school that we play against anyway.
I wasn't questioning it as like, why are we going with this? I was questioning it more. Will people behave themselves?
I
Thank
think if
you.
we put you out there for a couple days when it opens, I know I'd certainly listen to you and wouldn't come back.
You want me out?
I want you personally.
Me personally, put on my best teacher voice and go out there.
So is there some sort of surface covering that is going to go between on this? Because the football players have to enter the football field many times walking across the track. So is there some sort of surface protective layer that's going to be used to lay down or not? That's not part of the concern.
So it's not a major concern. I've seen them manage it just with some roll carpet that they just roll across as they walk. It's nothing too significant or involved.
I also think, I also think that because of the involvement of the athletic staff in getting something like this done, I think the athletic staff are really gonna police themselves or police their teams really well themselves. They know how long it took to get this investment in that field. They want to keep it for as long as possible. They want to, it's a big reason why this project passed in the community. We need to be honest with ourselves about that at the bond vote. This is a big part of that. And it's in everyone's interest to keep it as nice as possible.
All right, so we'll run through some images. We do want to, in a cost-effective manner, at least celebrate the entrance to the stadium. So we can do so with some enhancements to perimeter fencing, at least at the public-facing part. Highlight the entrance. Next slide. We do want to make sure that we secure the building around the perimeter, but also as we enter into the complex. Next slide. For example, we would anticipate this to be open to the public to use. So these would be turnstiles that would allow people to go through, but not someone to bring a motorized scooter, for example, that could do damage to the track or the field. Next slide. Again, just a close-up version. Completely handicap accessible for events, etc. Next slide. This is just an overall of the stadium itself. I want to point your attention to sort of the white retaining wall that you see on the bottom left-hand corner, just showing you that we are raising this out of the grade. Next slide. Just a view from the center of the field, looking back to the concession stand, flanked by each 500 seat on either side. Next slide. I know. This looks back to either the home or the away, depending upon how you all organically evolve into picking sides. Next slide. Looking the other direction. Concession stand never looked as good as it does in this image. Next slide. So one thing we wanted to make sure we did is to have a generous plaza so that boosters or other activities could occur behind the bleachers. That's what those tents are meant to represent. Also making sure that we had sufficient access to the field for either emergency vehicles, the band, the visiting team, the home team. That's why to the far left and to the far right, the plaza slopes down to the field. Next slide.
Is there?
Yes.
Is there a double fence all the way around?
Yes.
Is that what? So is
Right.
that just for people who are not participating, be able, or what's that for?
Correct. So let's see, I will find an image that, and we can talk about that some more. As I'll find a better image when we go through this, and I'll explain the double fencing. This is the ramp and stair in front of the concessions that leads to that perimeter walkway around the track and field. Next slide. This is the perimeter walkway that separates the track from the pedestrians that may be going around the track and the bleachers. You see the bleachers are elevated. So this will become an operational issue for the district. In some communities, people, instead of sitting in the stands, prefer to stand at the 4-foot high fence. That's what that perimeter fence around the track is for, is to keep people from going onto the track or onto the field. There is a 6-foot high perimeter fence around the entire complex to prevent someone from entering the site that is not authorized. Next slide. New scoreboard, obviously. This is a view of the field from the bleachers. Next slide. Looking in the other direction from the bleachers. Next slide. A view from the press box. Next slide. Looking back at the bleachers, there was some discussion about signage, and that's something we will look into as we develop the design for you all. Next. Again, the plaza, the bleachers are accessible, stairs and ramp, but leaving enough room behind the bleachers for tent structures, for other activities that may be occurring. We'll talk about the opportunity for storage underneath of those bleachers. That's what you see in those shipping containers. Next slide. Again, a little bit closer is that under the bleachers, we do have the opportunity to put some storage. We did this for another school, which was very effective. The track had one container, lacrosse had another container, football had another container, et cetera, that worked well instead of just leaving them randomly placed throughout the campus. Next slide. And of course, that can be secured behind a fence as well and accessed on the ends. Next slide. Looking back to the concession stand next. And overall, and again, I want to highlight the importance of these aisleways at the bottom and at the top for where the band, for example. Let's say the bleachers to the right is the home, and maybe that last section is where your band is. At halftime, they need to get onto the field. How do they get onto the field? Well, they're not going to go down that middle ramp where it's small and for individuals. It would traverse right down that wide area to the track. Same thing when everyone is trying to evacuate the end of an event. They're not going out that turnstile that they came in on. They're leaving through wide gates at either end of the plaza. Next slide. Just another view. Next slide. Another view. Again, if you look, you see that white retaining wall at the bottom of this image, just showing you that that's where we're raising this out of the ground. Next slide. One more. Go ahead, next slide. Those are the pole vault. We are going to be increasing the width of that, taking it to the lights, making it a little bit wider for just some more space around the long jump area. That was a request in working with Chip and the building committee. You see the field is striped in 3 colors. Yellow is soccer, white is football, blue is lacrosse. That's pretty common in high school sports. Next slide. Again, just looking back. Next slide. The other side, like I said, as that will get wider, we'll go to the light pole. Next slide. There you get a little bit more detail that you see the plaza where that part slopes down to a bunch of double gates, both at the top and at the bottom and at the track, et cetera. Wide enough to get an emergency vehicle down. Next slide. Other side. It's a great way of separating teams, by the way. The visiting team is on that side of the field plaza. Home team is on this side. Next slide. Okay. So the costs, our estimates right now are as follows. Site work is about 1.25 million. Track is $1 million. The field is 1.75 million. The site amenities, bleachers, fencing, the lighting, the plaza, it's about 2 million. And right now we're at about 6 million. So when we talked about the replacement costs 10, 12, 13 years from now, you are in, the $2 million range. So there needs to be a plan in place that over the next 10 years, you have capital dollars to replace that track and field.
Is that, when you say the track is $1 million, is that just the surface you're talking about? What is that the portion that will be replaced, or is that $1 million to build the whole thing with the asphalt and the?
So this is new, all inclusive of the base and the surface, et cetera.
But this is today's dollars, not
And
a
that,
decade
and
from
that
now
is
dollars.
today's dollar.
Right.
So we need to project as best we can, 10, 12 years from now, depending upon how the surface wears and how the track wears. In today's dollars, it will not be $1 million to replace. But if you're planning, it would be prudent to assume $1 million for a variety of reasons, escalation or maybe a deeper restoration than just a simple resurfacing.
And if I remember, our total budget for this was 11 million, but this isn't all the work that needs to be done. Doesn't include design and other,
So
other.
well, the 11 million, using the 11 million, we're taking off almost 750,000 for the demolition.
Okay.
Right now, we're estimating that this at 6 million. Then the remaining part is contingencies and part 3, which we are going to be designing part 3 after we wrap up the design for this one, and we'll have the pricing for this one. So in short order, in a few months, we'll have a better handle on how much money is left and what this is actually costing us.
But we think at this point, we're comfortably within that budget,
So.
or no, or maybe.
No, so we are. So like I said, we just did one of these in Barrington. This one has a $6 million budget. That one came in at 4.6 million. This one's got the additional site work, which I think is the difference. So I think the budget is right on for this.
Mr. Speaker, what are you had talked about grooming and proper cleaning and things that way in terms of machinery in order to keep this at shelf? Is that going to be included or is that going to be brought forward? And if so, would that be reimbursable?
So the equipment that you need to groom, that is being included as part of the bid price. It's an operational, so it's not reimbursable. That part of the project is not reimbursable, but not every single dollar on these projects is reimbursable. So.
Yes.
Just one other, could you remind us how much fill there is going in? How high are you raising that?
Yeah, I
Like-
think we're raising it, I want to say over 2 feet, maybe
Okay.
30 inches.
Okay. It's a big, so the site work doesn't really seem that expensive for that big area having to be raised. 2
No,
or 3 feet,
correct.
right?
And the turf fields require a pretty significant depth to manage all of the stormwater just for that. So it's advantageous for us to raise it and work with the grades. The town wanted to make sure that we did include equipment for grooming and maintenance so that you don't have to worry about that in the future. Next slide.
So I just want to say something. It's not a question, it's an opinion. I don't like the name Rebel Field. I just think that there might be a time in our future where we might have a different name. We don't even have a mascot. It's a name without a mascot. So I'd like to come up with a different name for that field, maybe just SK Field or something.
Absolutely. And again, we run the risk when we make these images look so complete and so finalized. The guys say, well, we need to call it something. Okay. So, all right, noted. The preliminary schedule will be making ride approval, ride submission. We did submit to RIDEM already. We'll be back again for design development, maybe the end of March, beginning of April, for CDs in April, bidding and award in May through June. We would imagine construction could start as early as July. It would go through the rest of the year. And then we think the phase 3, the final site work, would happen during the spring and summer so that we have a complete campus project that's all done when school opens in September of 27. And then I believe that's it. Next slide. There's no more slides. Okay. Any questions?
I just wanted to remind everybody here that this is a schematic design. And what we just saw, while it, for the most part, will be maintained, that there may be adjustments as we move forward. This is just to get that initial schematic design approval. And then as we move through the design development piece into the construction documents, that's when we get into the actual refinement. It's very similar to exactly the process we went with the high school. So changes will still be made with certain things. I would assume not structurally, it would be tweaks to your point, like where the high jump and the pole vault, like little things like that area is going to expand, or, a fence may move, or the turnstiles may not look exactly like they looked in that picture. So just a quick reminder to anybody who's watching, that this is kind of in theory, this is our schematic design that we're submitting to RIDE, but it will still continue to be developed over time.
I think big picture things like the location of where the field is, like the general scope of work will not change. I think once we get approval to move forward with that, we will. Things like you're right, like signage, lighting, exact types of lighting, all of that stuff will be detailed out in the design development construction documentation. You guys probably remember the spiel I used to give at the high school, which is it's schematic design, it's how everything works together. And then when we get to construction documents, I'm gonna have every single tree in every single location, the type of grass, what color every single wall is. So we're moving down there. There's a lot less to do, luckily, but fencing types and all that sort of stuff needs to get itself.
I would just like to make a personal comment. I am so excited about this. And unlike the high school project, where I drove by the other day in the daylight for the first time, and I scared myself when I came around that corner. So then I had to slow down and look. I live near Curtis Corner. I could walk to Curtis Corner. I will be checking that site out daily. I am so excited. We've been at this, especially Miss Massinanti and I, for way too many years, and it's just does my heart good. Thank you, gentlemen.
It's just gonna be my third year, we started to hire. My entire professional career, I'm not feeling something.
So basically what we are looking for, an approval, to submit what we just saw and what was presented to us to RIDE. So submit to RIDE upon approval, submit to RIDE end of February 26th. So as long as we can approve here. And we're the determining body, so we're not making a recommendation to anybody. The school building committee did make the recommendation for us to approve as presented. But because it's a programmatic piece, the school committee is the approving body for this particular phase.
So I will move on to B, discussion action, approval of Curtis Corner Middle School Athletic Field Project Schematic Design.
I will make a motion to approve the Curtis Corner Middle School Athletic Field Project Schematic Design.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That motion passes. Do you have anything else? No, thank you guys. It was great. All right, next up is item C, discussion action, terms of contract negotiation, interim director of facilities. So I will turn that over to the superintendent.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On the advice of counsel, rather than a memorandum or a letter between both parties, Attorney Henius recommended that a 90-day contract be put forward, and that if necessary to be ended sooner or extended, but rather than ongoing letters and extensions of contract that you already approved, that it come before this body. Again, it is the exact same contract as this committee took action on at our last meeting, with the exception of, again, of the duration. That is the only change. And again, that is based on the advice of counsel, and as well as because when you approved it, it was retroactive. We would be up before our next meeting as well. So we wanted to make sure that we support Mr. Adams in his interim capacity. And that's why it is before you again here tonight.
make a motion to accept the terms of contract negotiation as presented for the interim director of facilities.
And
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Okay, we have item D, discussion actions, school year 2026-27 annual school calendar.
Thank you. Before you, although we don't have a revised calendar for ending this school year, we did want to come back with a draft, or excuse me, with a draft that all bargaining unit members have had opportunity to give feedback on, as well as has been vetted with union presidents. It is very similar to the draft calendar presented before you. This is also a calendar that is responsive to the feedback of the community, as well as our students, faculty, and staff when we did do that survey. There is one caveat, however. There has been a push by cities and towns, and I believe it may have passed the General Assembly already, where they are they are looking to move the primary election day from the 8th to the 9th. So not the day after Labor Day, but then skipping a day. My understanding is because you're not going to have people available or to open up buildings to get ready for elections on Labor Day weekend. And so making sure that towns have the capacity to do that. Again, this calendar does not reflect that yet. We have not got new guidance from RIDE yet. However, it is something that I did want to make this body cognizant of. And I bring that up not just because it is then a breakup of the school year, or excuse me, of the first few weeks of school, but it is also for next school year. It is when we are looking to schedule our professional development day. Again, because of the lateness of it's as late as can be, as well as the heat and all that we have in August. We want to make sure that we get started and utilize, because we must by state law close schools. That does not mean we cannot host school business. It does if there's an election in that building, but we can still perform district-wide professional development if that building is not being used for elections, and South Kingstown High School will not be used for elections. Peacedale and Broad Rock have been approved as school sites, as election sites. And so for professional development, we will schedule it so it does not occur in those buildings on that day. This calendar, again, also proposes what we did for the first time. While this community may have done it previously, but we have done in quite some time, would be the first day of school would be for transition grades only, grades K, 6, and 9. That is repeated in this calendar. Again, the professional development day falling on the 8th, and then if the calendar were to change, potentially the 9th. If that guidance were to change, we would bring it back before you. Additionally, we maintain the day before Thanksgiving, as was a priority. And this does maintain all of the existing week-long vacations in February, April, and does have us concluding school before Juneteenth, before Juneteenth. And then I would draw to your attention the additional 4 days that are statutorily required. So even if we were to come to contract negotiations and come to an agreement where we are passing a school calendar with less days, less than 180 days, but we are adding in time to make the school day longer as permissible, we must pass a calendar that has makeup days built in, regardless of whether you add time or not. That addition of time is something that needs to be come to a memorandum of agreement or of understanding, and we are not at that place yet. We are starting to enter into those, but that is separate from the calendar discussion. When principals asked for feedback, that was one of the main pieces of feedback, that people were interested in how other communities do that and coming to that. However, that is not a calendar discussion at this time because, again, it's about the contractual day, and we would then adjust accordingly if we can come to an agreement. So once again, we start before Labor Day, again, due to both election days needing to be closed. However, again, we do have an extended November. We do maintain the traditional winter and April recess, and we do conclude school before the observance of Juneteenth. And this does mirror the priorities of the community, all aspects of the community, students, faculty and staff, and families. This calendar does its best to reflect that, and that is why it is before you for your approval this evening.
Mr. Pedraza, I will contact our reps and ask if that legislation comes up before the House or the Senate or both, to let me know, and I will get that information back to you as soon as I get the information. And can I just ask you to give, it's me that can't remember, how are we allowed to make up some days virtually? I can't remember because I was never involved in that.
So every district is allowed to submit a virtual learning plan annually to the state for review, and it must be approved on an annual basis. There are certain guidelines that they've put forward in terms of memorandums of agreement with bargaining units, as well as, and why I tend to not be in favor of the virtual days as constituted is they have certain requirements on there, such as the amount of synchronous instruction that must occur during that window, as well as the amount of students who must participate in order for it to count as a day. So I believe they say that of that time for the day, at least 3 hours must be synchronous. When we think about our youngest learners and screen time, as well as if you don't have power, I don't know how you are doing synchronous activities. As such, I am not in favor of virtual learning plans as currently constituted and required by RIDE. Again, we get 180 days, really 179 for all students now, which again, we're doing for the educational benefit, cutting down upon those more so without, absent extreme circumstance. Even if we had been, let's say we had put it in this year, given that we are now, for the most part, while we're still a one-to-one district in terms of having carts available and having a computer available for each and every student, if you think about this most recent, that happened on a vacation. There would have been no way for us to even issue out computers. So the amount of logistics and time and operations, while it can be done, it does take up significant time, resources, and I have my concerns, my pedagogical concerns. Sorry, more than you asked for.
I'm not wildly in favor of virtual learning either, but I've been asked several times over the last couple of weeks, such and such a district did virtual learning. Why didn't we? And my response was, I know there's certain requirements from RIDE. I just don't know what they are. So thank you.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion to approve the school year 2026-2027 annual school calendar as presented.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That motion passes.
Thank you.
All right, so we have up next E, discussion action policy number 8435, high school grades and honorary diploma policy first read. James?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this policy was brought to our last policy meeting by Mr. Pedraza as a adjustment to the learner quality score portion of the policy, which starts on page 3. So if you look at the policy that we currently have on the books for 8435, it has 4 levels of learner quality scores. It's meets. I forget I don't remember off the top of my head. I can go look at it on our policy docs and board docs, but there was a 4-point scale, but the need was to change it to a 2-point scale. Mr. Pedraza can fill in more details on why that's necessary. And we also added this table of the different categories and what's means accomplished and what means developing. And so this follows the 7 C's that we've had all along. So just makes that more apparent. But yeah, if Mr. Pedraza, if you have additional comments on the why we're changing from the 4 to the 2, that would be helpful.
Absolutely. So this comes to us from here at the high school via Dr. McGarr, but this was unanimously approved by the South Kingstown High School faculty. This is actually, I believe it's one of the last recommendations that needed to be or could be immediately addressed or in a timely fashion from the last NEASC visit. In terms of really what we're doing here is we're taking out classwork, homework completion, class participation, meeting deadlines, and class attendance, and bringing in scores directly correlated or directly involving the vision of the graduate and the 7 C's. So it's not about work habits, it's about critical thinking and content mastery. It's about communication and creativity. Additionally, these are also ongoing scores. They are not something that is that gets a cumulative score. So as such, with formatives, the reporting out, we don't need a 4-point scale that was in the past, whether it's meeting with distinction or meets regular. So what we have here and what has been proposed or adopted and proposed here is it occurring or is it not? And if it is, and is it regularly occurring? If so, it's been accomplished for that snapshot in time. And then if not, it doesn't mean that you're not there. It doesn't mean that you're a 1 or a 2 or a 3. It means you're just not there yet. You haven't demonstrated them yet. And so this is a pedagogical shift in happening in terms of formative assessment. Similarly, there are also, 1-point or 2-point rubrics where you have the standard and it's either being achieved or it's not. Here, it's either been demonstrated to have been accomplished in the time period, in the case of the high school, in the first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter, but it is also evolving. And it ultimately, it harnesses pedagogically the power of yet. It's not that you didn't do it, you just didn't do it regularly yet, and reporting on that out that way. So again, it is directly aligned to the vision of the graduate. It then reflects the best practices and standards of NEASC in terms of formative assessment. And again, it is a recommendation of the accreditation committee to change the policy, to make these changes, and hence it's before you here this evening.
So do all students get, I'm going to call them both grades, but two assigned assessments grades, a letter grade for academic achievement and then this learner quality score? Is that what this is?
Yes.
Okay, great. No, and it makes a lot of sense. It
Yep.
seems a lot more simplified and streamlined and clear. I mean, I think it's easier for me to understand. So I can tell a lot of hard work went into this by the faculty. So I want to thank them as well.
Absolutely. And that, just to clarify for the public, that this is for the high school. This is a grading scale and reporting scale for high school students. So
I just want
Is
to
it-
thank Carol for you clarifying so that people don't misconstrue that we're going away from grades.
Right, I just want to be clear
Yeah.
that we still get a grade, and I think it's good. This is for the high school. And so it's very specific, but there is this learner quality, which I think is an important part because we're developing the whole student, not just academically, but also other learner qualities. So I think it's very effective, and I'm glad that it's gone from a 4 level down to a 2. It just seems easier to understand and easier for students to understand what their expectations are.
One thing that I like about this as someone who's out in the work world, that's outside of academia, um, the professional world has really moved towards a growth mindset. And so you have, which this reflects, which I really enjoy, where you have you have your strengths or things that you have accomplished and achieved, and you're celebrating those. And then you have these other areas where it's no longer like, oh, you failed. It's this is an opportunity for you to grow. And it really is retraining the mindset around us for people to really embrace this growth mindset. And it's a powerful move when you're out in the workforce. And I think it's just a great foundation to start it with our high schoolers and our young adults to start thinking in those terms, especially around learning. You can't really fail at learning. You just haven't gotten there yet. And I think it's a great whoever's driving it to us, I think it's awesome and equally as awesome that we're embracing it. So thank you.
I agree with what Ms. Massananti said. The whole concept of the student has not mastered the concept yet. But I wonder if we also have a possibility of a student who might master all the content in a certain course in less time. For example, and you folks know that this is where my comfort level lies. So a student in Algebra 1, suppose that student completes the content successfully of Algebra 1 before December. Can they get another course?
I would need to, we didn't look into that aspect of this policy in terms of, demonstrating mastery in advance. I would venture that to guess that my answer would be no, and that the cumulative assessment for the course has not been administered yet. So that student's opportunity to demonstrate proficiency on topics that they've not yet received instruction on, due to the scope and sequence. Taking concurrent courses, I know is available. But again, I'll need to get back to you in that. I haven't researched the feasibility of that in this policy.
Thank you. This is great.
All right, so this is a first read. I don't hear that there's any changes or anything going forward. All right, so we'll bring it back for a second read at our next meeting. Great, thanks. And thank the policy committee for all their work on this as well.
Yeah, no, thank you, Mr. Pedraza, for doing a lion's share of the effort and the administration at the high school.
All right, great. And so that will bring us to our last item, discussion action fiscal year 2026-27 proposed budget presentation. Mr. Pedraza.
Okay. So what will look both familiar and unfamiliar and new, taking the committee's the last presentation and feedback. This is the latest iteration that I have for you regarding our presentation for next Monday evening. That is before you. Next slide, please. So although previous iterations, we had our bluff slide, but in previous budget slides of previous years, we didn't have one in this year's presentations. However, I believe it was Mr. Lander and at the end said, oh, well, we need to mention those things earlier. I believe Chair Vetter also brought up, oh, well, we need to make sure that that's apparent sooner. We don't, waiting till we get to state aid. We need to introduce that topic first. And so that's why this, I've added a few slides here for the bottom line up front. I also wanted to make sure that we're doing some celebrating as well. Especially because when we start getting into the numbers or we start talking about, it is very encouraging that our enrollment is stabilizing. And that is truly the foundation of our budget ask. We do not have declining enrollment. We do not have schools to close. We do not have ESSER money to go away. We have level enrollment or we are expecting level enrollment next year. We do not have sections at elementary schools that can be collapsed, and all of those things have been done. And so we're taking that step forward and we're being successful. And so as such, the expectation to continue to make as many staffing changes that we have done over the past few years is just not feasible given our enrollment. And so that's something to be celebrated, and I want to make sure that that's the first thing, first and foremost. We're also facing those key funding challenges, the unanticipated loss of state aid. Again, that is not driven by large enrollment declines. We'll get to this at another slide, but again, a lot of it will be the same information, but for those who are only going to tune in for this part, that is of that 3/4 of that is because of a cut to high cost special ed funding, with 1/3 being related, or excuse me, 1/4 being related not just to a slight enrollment decline, but also because this community's wealth has increased. And so the amount that the state is willing to give us this fiscal year went down, again, based off of the property values and the income, that given that we are the 7th highest or lowest in the state, depending on how you want to frame that. Additionally, the employee benefits, factors that are outside of our locus of control. And as Mr. Scheer said, or had brought up, is happening in the private sector as well in terms of healthcare costs and those defined benefits. We're actually, in many cases, lucky with an employer contribution and a defined benefit plan with the percent that the trust is only saying. Additionally, we're losing $600,000 potentially. We're losing it definitely because it was a one-time give only by the town council. So again, these are factors that are not enrollment based. They are not under the school's locus of control. And even right here, these are not unfunded mandates. These are things that we must react to, and we no longer have the tools in our toolbox that we had 5, 6, 3 years ago. And then ultimately, we also that in our current budget proposal, we are using a significant amount of our fund balance for operations. And as such, that places our ability to do our capital improvement projects in jeopardy. Not only in the short term, because as we shift $1 million from capital improvement projects over to operations, but over the long term, because the more we use our fund balance for operations and not for capital improvement, then the less that state reimbursed, the less we have to put forward and get reimbursed with that 35% reimbursement to set up those reoccurring restricted funds that we had talked about during the CIP process. So I'll pause a minute here because this is a new slide. And if okay, next slide. Also new to this conversation is that the town, we have learned that since our budget submission, the town manager has once again recommended that we stay at that we be level funded. And as such, bottom line up front, what we have here is again, that local appropriation of that 55.9 to try and put into context then and now. Ultimately, and this is these are United States. These aren't just these aren't local examples. These are, all encompassing from the, US CPI. So these are from national sources. These are not intended to show what's exactly happened in the district, but ultimately what we're facing. And what most people know is that what a dollar bought in 2020 versus what a dollar will buy now it is very different. Overall, we see a 24% increase. So ultimately, that 55.9 million in 2021 is approximately $69 million in today's dollars, or what would be the equivalent. Again, we're not there. And again, I won't bore you with the script and going through, as it hopefully it is again self-explanatory. But again, every single aspect that is up there, every district is facing. These are not unique costs. South Kingstown is not an outlier. These are just the costs of doing business in education and having and funding public education.
Can I just suggest that
Please.
when I love this, first of all, I love the readability of the whole presentation. The update you made straight through was super helpful. This in particular is very poignant, and it doesn't need much discussion. It clearly speaks for itself. I like that you name your source. And I would kind of not leave it at that, because it clearly will have to have a discussion, because the town knows that this is true, because they talk about it every budget season, how there's been inflation and they have to meet the needs and the whole 9 yards. So, but to map it out like this, when you say then versus now, then being, I'm assuming 2020.
Correct.
Right. And so if we had been preparing for then to now along, we wouldn't be with such a big gap. So, and I mean, we collectively, the town, not we, the school department. But again, it doesn't need too much, I'll say like a monologue to go with it, because it's pretty clear.
Yeah, I was actually gonna make a point. I'm wondering how useful is this going to be for going in front of the town council? Because they know this, like this is, they know this information. So I just wasn't sure it was going to be helpful for having that discussion with the
I
town.
think we have to point out that a dollar in 2020 is not worth a dollar today, right? So we can't, I think we need to keep paying away at that, but you can't expect to have the same outcomes without increasing over time. I mean, as you said, they increase their budget every year for the town. Without the population increasing, the percentage increase of the town's budget increases a lot faster than the population of the town increases, which is barely at all. So I think we need to point this out over and over again in different ways, because
I
the
agree.
fact that they know it doesn't mean it has to be in front of them, and it has to be a continuous point of discussion for us.
So when I looked at the CIP, I'm sorry, the CPI, Consumer Price Index in the calculators online, if I looked at 2021's dollars versus 2026's dollars, we would need $11.2 million more. So I think there's lots of ways we can keep saying it so they understand. We're asking for 2.5 because we've saved you 11.2.
Actually, more than 11.2, because it's really cumulative, right? Every year we've
Right.
saved you those increases.
Right. That's just back then to now. Absolutely. Yeah.
I think it's a great point to make, because I think that's hard to, it's hard to envision that the extra money, because I remember way back when we were having conversations like, where's that 1.5 million that you're or whatever? It's because our budget didn't go up 1.5 million. That's where we saved the money by closing the schools or whatever the number was, wherever the discussion was at the time. It's hard to see that the money we're not getting is the money we're saving the town.
Given the conversation, I will say, I'll ask for the next slide because it's in the similar veins, but rather than using percentages I try to use examples. And again, these are generic examples, just using the percentages, but again, common costs that, again, these are not SK costs. So again, our root cost, that is not our root cost. That is an example of a root cost of $50,000 in today's dollars. If it cost $50,000 in 2020, 2021, given the rate of inflation on transportation, we're now looking at 62.5. So again, because folks will come out and they'll say, well, yeah, but your enrollment went down. Yes, our enrollment went down. We adjusted for that. And what we have now are costs that are now at the 2026, 2027 level, not the 2020, 21 level. And that this slide just tries to put that into smaller concrete examples rather than percentages. And
I think this might be confusing for people because they might assume that, oh, health insurance was 100,000. I know where you're going. You're like, if it was 100,000, it would be 130 to 135 now. I totally get it. I'm not sure everybody looking at the slide will get it. That's my concern.
I tend to agree with that. It could be confusing to have numbers that are hypotheticals.
Okay.
That, people could use it, to say this is, oh, it costs that and now it costs this. Like, these are not real numbers. These are hypotheticals, but it's hard to ascertain that from the slide.
And I think I agree that the actual numbers are confusing unless, I don't know, I'm kind of debating whether it makes sense for us to say, here's what one person costs us for health insurance, an actual number. But I don't know if we really want to show that, or I mean, I do like that the 35 to 45% increase in labor is there. So I think health insurance has increased, the cost has increased faster than inflation. So could it be maybe we want to focus on some of the areas where our costs, that what you did in the last slide was just inflation average for everything. And maybe we focus here on things that have actually increased at a rate that's faster than inflation, like healthcare has increased at a faster rate than that. I don't know what else has. We've probably actually helped teacher salaries at a low, I mean, our teachers on a cost adjusted basis are making less than they made probably 8 years ago because inflation is rising faster than their salaries are increasing.
Building maintenance probably has been faster than inflation.
Yeah, so you're showing the 35, 45%. So I think those areas where it's actually increased faster than inflation I don't know if transportation has because of gas prices, if that's been something that's, because our contracts are multiple years, so it's harder for them to increase those costs, but so I don't know. But utilities certainly are increasing. I know we're in this buying group, so maybe that's helped us, but I would look at that. So that building repair makes the most sense to me because it's something that we said 24% on the last slide. And here's an area where we're actually going up by 35 to 45%. So where else have we gone up by more than 24%?
so what we can do is, in terms of that first slide, we also have the opportunity of the 15th and 16th and see the reaction, or in terms of our talking points and questions, and potentially have more time to do a real analysis. We could come to analysis in order to demonstrate where we have been good, to your point, excuse me, good stewards of the taxpayer dollars, where we're coming under this, and or where given regional salaries or given regional costs of living, that we might be exceeding it in certain areas. When I think about, again, or is still that remains to be seen given student transportation, and it's one of the contracts that needs to be fulfilled in it, and as such is still in limbo. So,
Mr. Pedraza, on the slide before this that had all the percentages, you don't have to go back to it, but when you were going through that, at the end, you said something about some total 69. I missed that.
So ultimately, on the previous slide with the consumer price index of 24%,
Yeah,
what I did is I took our level fund, the local appropriation from the town and took 24% of that and added in, ultimately, if we've had a 24% overall consumer price increase in consumer prices, ultimately what we once bought in 2020, 2021, what it would take to buy that same amount now, given that percentage increase. And so
so,
that's where that ultimately that $69 million, approximately $69 million today. So take the local appropriation and multiply it by the
by
24%,
1.24, yeah.
and that's where I get the approximate $69 million.
So I wonder what my colleagues at the table think about including that in either this slide or one of the others, actually putting it right out there. You know, our level funding has been this, and now taking into consideration the consumer price index raise of 24%, we would need 69 million to buy the same services, goods, like actually putting it there, because
Yeah.
as Mr. Estivo said, the slide with the percents, the town council knows that, but I think we've got to put it out there that we also know that. And how is that impacting our spending and our programs?
Sure. So the commentary on this also without going through a dress rehearsal of what would be presented on Monday, there would be examples, once again, in terms of that 69 million coming up under consumer prices, but that medical healthcare insurance, again, not under our locus of control. We can't negotiate pre-pandemic health insurance. We can't,
Right.
Affordable Care Act in terms of labor costs, teacher, the supply and the pool of qualified educators throughout the nation as well as the state. We need to have robust compensation systems for the fantastic work that our employees do, but as well as to retain and attract and retain. In terms of energy and utilities, those costs in terms of going up, as well as having outdated infrastructure that we then potentially need to finance and pay for over years and years, is something that's creeping in. Constructions, facilities repair, those roofs that need to be repaired at one point were probably 6 years ago, might have been 1.5 million. They're now 2.
I think this would be maybe clearer if instead of all the different numbers where we're starting, because I'm not sure how we got to say $100,000 be the baseline for health insurance and $1 million to be for teacher salaries.
Yep.
Maybe they should all just be $1. Like in 2020, $1 in health insurance now costs $1.30. Right?
That
Or
would be a lot.
$1 in building repairs costs $1.35. Because that's what's confusing to me about this, is just that I don't know why one's $500,000, one's $50,000 is the baseline.
Yep.
So if they were all just, this is what $1 is
Dollar.
then, and this is what
That's okay.
it would cost today.
Yeah,
That's
I agree with that.
Very
Kind of-
clear, yeah.
Yeah, standardizing all of it would make it low and take away the risk of people thinking these are real numbers.
I look at this and I could see somebody thinking the teachers get $1 million, right? That's like $1 million salary for a teacher. We'd
I
have,
say this.
That's why I get
again,
to-
right?
we
Like,
have,
How can you?
we have,
No,
right.
if your own
We have some
stuff
approval from the union.
is, I mean, if your own livelihood is hitting your own pocket and you're finding it a struggle to be able to live, I don't know how you can possibly think that it's not a struggle to provide these things for our school district, right? We're talking about, we have to educate kids. We have to pay the educators a living wage to be able to live. And we have this same conversation year after year after year, and it's been 6 years for me, and I say the same thing every year, but yet we keep getting level funded. Level funding is, in my personal opinion, is not doable anymore. It's just not. And we all know this. I believe they know it as well. And I believe they, you know, I mean, their personal wealth is different from their business wealth. Okay, so it may not seem like such a big deal, but it is a big deal because without this funding to keep our public schools going, we are going to hurt a lot of families in this district. And that's what it really comes down to.
And
It's driving out public education.
so, and I agree with you, Paula, as far as where drive is to make sure doesn't happen, or we're gonna fight to try to not have that happen. It's out of our sphere of influence. But also, I want to make sure that we're going at it with them, not at them. And they're not trying to defund public education. They're not trying to defund public education. We need them to help us figure out the problem here because we have gone 7 years or we've gone 6 years. This would be the 7th year. They've gone 7 years. This would be the 8th year.
So no, so this in the 2020-2021 school year was the last increase.
Okay.
And so this 55.9 million was approximate,
Okay.
was established in that. so
2020,
in-
which is why that's your benchmark. Perfect. That makes
Right.
sense now.
So we will be 7 years at the same dollar amount though.
And I think that's the piece is we need to work together with them to solve this problem. We can't go at them and say, you did this to us. Everybody knows what's happened over the past 6 to 7 years. This is where we are now. Help us solve the problem. Because we've done all we can do, closing schools, reducing headcount, and we work really hard to not impact our programs. And we're at the bottom line. So I love keeping this slide and having the $1, 2020 $1 equals, and then what 2026, 27 equals. But then I beg everybody at the table to come at this with a collaborative mindset, working with them as partners to solve this problem. Because going at them, you did this to us, you know what you've done. Is it helpful or harmful to the conversation, and what are we going to get out of it? I don't know. I'm sorry, that's my new age Kate view.
I agree with you on that.
I also think that we need to stress that collaborative look, but also we're building this great, fabulous, fantastic new high school. I'm so excited. Sorry, I changed the subject. I'm back. And if we're level fund, if we, the town council and us together, are level funding the schools again, we are sending out a message to our community and also outside communities that might think of sending their children to our schools, that we don't value education. And we need to put forth the image to the rest of the state and the area, the community, that we do value education.
It does create a kind of confusing narrative to have this new high school and then turn around and say, no, we're not going to invest in the programming that the schools need. I think we really just need to make the case, like to everyone's point, like we cut where we can everywhere we possibly can. And I know there's going to be some sentiment like, maybe there's more, you can find more savings in transportation, more savings here and there. But that's going to be nibbling around the edges. And there's really, and we'll probably get into this a little bit later in this presentation, but there's really no significant areas we can cut anymore. Like we've got rid of all the things we could possibly, reduce. So it's going to be a tough conversation, but I definitely agree. It should be a collaborative conversation. It should be, how do we work through this? What can we do? Maybe have to get creative. Like, what do we do? But maybe capital improvement comes more out of their budget than our budget, and we can use our money for operations, and the buildings can be maintained or not maintained, but at least serviced by town money. And there's ways we could probably do it, but I think it's going to be a conversation with the town council, not in opposition, but in collaboration.
Yeah, I think that we have challenges to solve and we need to solve them together. But I think we need to also remind ourselves and the town council that we are so fortunate. We live in a community that highly values education. And so our community is going to supporting our schools at an appropriate level. I see it every day with people that tell me they're, so glad their kids are in our schools and proud of the programs that we have and support. So, I mean, I think that it's a challenging year. There's a way forward. There are options. We just need to make sure that we come together in a way that we work together to solve the challenges, to make sure that we can keep our programs strong. And I know there's a way forward. And we're just going to have to be flexible too.
I think also that they asked us to close schools. We did. They asked us to have that equity audit. We did. Now we're trying to implement it. They need to understand that we did all those things. We had the decreasing enrollment and we did decrease our staff. And so and I'm not even going to say that word.
So I will do my best to, I will communicate all of those in my remarks and in presentation, and will obviously welcome, refer to you as my 7 friends to join in that commentary, as well as, further that narrative, as well as, introduce, the local context that only you can bring in. And so I'll look to share that once completed, but I hear everyone. And again, that collaborative piece, again, as I think I said multiple times, is that we all want what's best for this town. We just may have different ideas of how to get there. And I think we'll get there. So with that, I will change that slide based off of, but that's ultimately those are the newest slides to the slide deck, again, to bring up given that we were level funded, as well as cutting to the point and establishing the reoccurring themes, both good and bad, more upfront. So next slide. Okay, so here we get into our current status, not only in terms of goals, but in terms of where we're headed, but where we are. Priorities and goals, enrollment, staffing, and fund balance. Because each one of those is a major factor in our FY27 request. Next slide. Priorities and goals. While this was listed, essentially, so we have the priorities and goals that have been recently established, as well as initiatives that are ongoing and that would be placed potentially in jeopardy without adequate funds. So in terms of proficiency and equity, we have a gap closure coach now, expanding research-based instructional strategies in all disciplines, not just math and ELA. We've adjusted our universal screen benchmarks to reflect Rhode Island state standards that are on the assessments, boosting it up from 40% to 50% to make sure that those students who are on the cusp, that we're taking advantage of our amazing educators to help the students and not artificially inflating scores. Again, for those high expectations we have, as well as making sure that our resources go to those who need it. In terms of trust and respect, we've reorganized disciplinary procedures and handbooks. We've applied for and received Rhode Island Healthy Schools grants. Further developmental relationships. We've received professional development actually today in restorative practices to build on that trust and respect. In terms of inclusive practices, we've had professional development from the Rhode Island Autism Project. The CLAC has been reestablished. We have also professional development on facilitated IEP process, of which RIDE now is putting us forward as an exemplar. And then in terms of voice, attending all of the open houses to speak directly to parents and hear from them about the equity audit, principals setting up advisory committees, new student councils, Title I nights, and as well as amplifying voices by expanding those Q1 surveys, calendar surveys, and those ongoing feedbacks. So next slide, please. So here's the enrollment. The chart looks somewhat familiar. However, what I did was I left the NESDEC and the color scheme I took away, and that I didn't want to get too caught up in, hey, wait a minute, what's that pink doing in there? But ultimately I put those over to the sides. And that, again, our current enrollment of students in seats of 2,175. Next year projects to 2,160. Well, I thought you said it was level. However, our current enrollment projections, one for grades K and pre-K, we have to use projections for those grades, as well as in grades 6 and 9. Historically, we see a bump. We know how many students are enrolled in local charter schools and that end at those grade levels, and we know that they have a choice to make. And we know that in many cases, they do come back to us. So if they were all to come back to us, we would actually have increased enrollment in terms of students in seats, and we would be able to accommodate those with existing staffing.
Is that number total 18 there in the second paragraph?
That 18, yes,
So that's 18 potential students that could come back to us.
correct.
Okay.
Yep. Again, that's not to say that there couldn't be attrition, moving out, private schools, other choices, but again, a lot of times it's like, oh, 6th grade went up. Why? Oh, maybe it's this program we're offering. Maybe it's it. Well, it might also be that we're returning students from a charter school.
So I just have a question about the 9th grade. It looks like we're carrying over 8th to 9th. Is that assuming there's no loss to CTE programs in other districts?
That is, as of right now, yes. So what I'm doing is I'm taking our existing students who are with us, assuming they're with us next year. The only time I'm using projections is in kindergarten, that I have to rely on NESDEC because pre-K enrollment is optional, as well as determinations of how many kindergarten will they enroll with us are still to be determined. But again, I have to rely on those. Everything else are actual students and assumes that rollover.
We could also attract other community students to our CTE program. So, I mean, it's an estimate. But I mean, we doubled from 5 to 11 from last year to this year. Wouldn't it be great to double again? So, I mean, I think that overall,
Yeah.
we are looking at stability for the first time, and that's something to be celebrated.
Right.
Well, I think as we get closer to the high school opening, we'll start retaining and attracting more.
And so, at this time, or with this slide, I'll also talk about what's been presented to you before, that, strictly using our projections from NESDEC can work the wrong way, especially like this year where we were projected with a 3.8 decline and only saw a 1.8. And so, the So it can work both ways. And so again, these are what our assumptions are. They are real with the exception of pre-K and K. Yeah, if they're out there, my apologies, but these are real students who are with us currently now that that can be accounted for. How many decide to go elsewhere in that critical or during that time in 8th to 9th? It's going to vary.
I mean, I didn't want to put the NESDEC numbers to make it, didn't want to confuse anything, but I think it would be helpful to see what was the projection for 25, 26 from NESDEC and how our real numbers compared to that. So we can get that differential there.
Okay, so in terms of 25, 26 actual I'll explore if I can do a NESDEC projected.
Or even just mention it. It might not.
No,
be on the- It'll be on-
it's in the comment. It will be in the,
I would hate to put it on the slide because
Exactly.
not the folks going on.
Yeah.
I feel like what it just is because we clearly had a robust conversation trying to understand it in the last meeting too. So, but
That's
it was touching, talking about it.
yeah, I
Yeah.
do speak to it.
Yeah, I would like to, what was the number from NESDEC from 25, 26?
So it would have been, yes, it was, I believe it was 46. I believe it was 46.
Okay, so it would have been 21, whatever. I'm not gonna do the math, but yeah, would have been 46 lower than that number.
Spread across the pre-K through 12 continue.
Well, sure, but I'm talking about just like the total number, I think is more impactful because once you start breaking it out into the grade levels, that's where it gets more confusing as to what are we talking about here.
Next slide. We continue with enrollment, but in this case, again, highlighting that it is not just the students that are in our seats that we are fiscally responsible for, but those that both choose and need to attend programs or schooling elsewhere. And so we have our total ultimately our total fiscal responsibility for this current school year is 2,465. And that is also including that obligation of 11 students who are currently paying tuition to the district in order to participate in our CTE programs.
So I love to tie out slides one to the other. And I think the other slide was butts and seats, right? Which would be in district residency and the tuition in, correct? So that's the 2175. Do we need to make that clear so that they know where these numbers are coming from? Or we just answer their questions when they ask? I don't know if we need to
Like maybe like-
lump butts and seats or.
Maybe just like 2 lines from in district.
I
until
am
tuition
not
into
putting that in a
2175.
slide graphic. That will not be on any infographic that I create.
Just an appearance. But just an appearance. I don't know if the lines are the colors are supposed to be every other, or you missed the or are those,
Okay.
are the colors supposed to mean something? Right now, it looks like you're trying to call out something else.
It was
because it's not every other, it's just a mist
Thank you.
shading. But I agree that it would be good to have that 2175 number somewhere here to just
Got it.
say,
Or if you go with the color scheme,
because otherwise they're gonna say, well, what happened to that number?
Okay,
or if you go with the color scheme, maybe those last 2 lines could be a slightly different color to highlight. These are the 2 numbers that we're talking about when we talk about 2175.
Okay. I'll do something with the headings in terms of enrollment in our buildings and then total responsibility and then our in-district residency and tuition. I'll color code that as seen in the previous slide.
I'm not going to ask you to change these numbers at all. I'm going to ask, are you going to talk about homeschooling at all? I only say that because they ask about it.
I'll have it at the ready.
So I don't want it here. Like, I'm not saying I think you should do X, Y, Z. I'm just
Yep.
know that they're going to ask about homeschooling.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, I think it's good to have as much, even if we're not presenting it, to have as much information as possible, because the more that you can just right away answer their questions, it's true. Yeah. Cause then they'll go down a rabbit hole and then but then they'll just follow it forever. because they've gotcha or something. I mean, I'm not gotcha that way, but that they are trying to understand and we just keep circling around it. So if anything answered and we can move on, the better. Yeah, totally agree.
Will do. Thank you.
I don't have any data to back this up, but the way I understand it, there has been a movement towards homeschool across the country. And so, that might be mentioned at the same time as you mentioned the homeschool stuff. Thank you.
Yeah, I think to expand on that, I think would be good to have potential like trend and like, is it going up? Is it going down? We had X number of homeschool requests this year. Is that up from last year or down from last year?
Will do.
Same.
No, everything.
We got it. I will have a binder and yes, and flip.
But
Guy Michael, got it. Yes. Will do.
you laugh, but I think that's a really good idea. Have a cheat sheet. Just to answer all the questions. Absolutely. You gotta answer all these questions. They have a lot of questions and they should.
I mean, my team. Have I won? So we'll do. Next slide, please. So staffing, again, just putting it into a more visually appealing format. This is the same information that has been pointed out in all of the presentations. I will have at the ready, even though I talk about the position type was discussed and presented on 12/18. I will have that list at the ready. So if needing to say who falls in or who's classified under what position, we will be able to speak to it. Next slide.
Draza,
Yes.
just, like a question that might come up for your cheat sheet. A lot of people in the community, parents and non-parents, think deans are administrators. So in case that comes up, just add that to your cheat sheet. Thank you.
Will do. Thank you. So here in staffing part 2, these are reductions that we are calling for even in the midst of level enrollment. Because we know that our approximate, $4 million shortfall, we're not asking for 4 million. We're asking for 2.5, and we're looking to be good financial stewards of taxpayer dollars. And so we are making reductions where we can. We're doing that through salary breakage, which again, for those who are retiring, and then coming in and those lower costs and making sure that those can come on in. Section attrition and position eliminations, in which case those are larger savings because again, we are eliminating both salary and benefits. And then a position reclassification, which we are referring to as salary breakage, where we see the establishment of a position in the aforementioned dean being removed from admin and combining, where we will see a approximately $27,000 for a total reduction of $600,000. Also in these staffing reductions, it is our hope that that again, we get the best candidates who are out there, but this does assume fifth step. So we don't want to over assume that if somebody retires and we lose a 10th step teacher, that we're automatically going to be able to find an individual with first step credentials. So we're hopeful that we get young educators who will be with us for a long time. And as such, we will have, this is on the lower end of breakage and that we'd like to see this go up, but we don't want to be too aggressive in our assumptions. Additionally, as retirement notices come in, this is a factor that can also change, and that we would look to then reduce, and we'll get to this in another slide, that we would then look to use less of fund balance for operations.
Do we have an agreed upon All right, this is probably a foolish question because things have changed so much since I left public school, but do we have an agreed upon, um, like retirement, like so many weeks before, so many months before you're going to retire?
We do for, the retirement incentive, that there's a certain date of notice. Yep. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so this is actually a familiar slide. So again, salaries and benefits together represent approximately 68% of our proposed budget. And again, this slide shows why those costs are rising even as we do reduce positions. We do have certain contractual responsibilities that are set for both our custodians and our teachers. And so those are definitive numbers at 2% for Council 94 and 2.5 for NEASC members. And we are also in negotiations and have factored in a 2% for those that we are in negotiations with. So that also can shift. In terms of our benefits, the trust, who is our insurer, has recommended, and it is represented here as a 10% increase to our health care. Additionally, we need to not only put that onto our current employees, but also onto our retiree benefits. Again, pension, other benefits, including pension contributions, workers' comp, unemployment liability, brings us to a grand total there of over $8 million. Again, but for our employees who are our greatest assets and who do the yeoman's work of those core values each and every day, an investment in our personnel is an investment in our students. Next slide, please. So while there was a lot that we were trying to say with fund balance and a lot that I wanted to make sure that we tried to convey, and so feedback is warm and cool, is welcomed. So we now have an audited fund balance, and these numbers are consistent with the audit. So we would be able to remove that unaudited total. The current years, so we started the year at the end of the 25-26 at 4.7. We then took 1.1 million for this year's put towards capital improvement, as well as we put money into the encumbrance for projects that had yet to be finished last fiscal year, as well as needed to be done or that we can anticipate need to be done this fiscal year. So that leaves us with 2.9 that is our best guesstimate as of right now. We have not dipped into fund balance yet this year outside of those costs. We will obviously be monitoring that as encumbered funds get paid out. So we are proposing shifting that annual $1 million that used to go to capital improvement, that we may need to shift that, or we anticipate having to shift that to operations, leaving us with a 1.9 remaining fund balance. That 1.9, in full transparency, is above our policy, which says it should be between 1% and 2% of operating expenses. Ultimately, that 1.9 is 2.9% of our proposed budget going forward. However, I would like to point out or remind to folks that the GFOA, in terms of their recommendation, they're urging folks to no longer think of your fund balance as a savings account, but rather as an insurance account. And once again, in today's dollars, $1.9 million in terms of a comprehensive district with 5 schools, more than 6 buildings, and thousands of students and faculty, you need to have a robust
Can I
insurance.
ask The policy you're referring to, is that a school committee policy?
That is our school committee policy.
So why are we not looking at changing that policy? It comes back year after year after year as if it's the law that we can't go, that we shouldn't go above 2%. And every year in a budget meeting, we're told that we're keeping too much in savings. And I agree. I mean, if it would make sense, if 2% might make sense if we weren't level funded. But as we've seen, the value of a dollar isn't what the value of a dollar used to be. So 2% of the same amount doesn't make sense, right? It would be 2%. So I think that might be part of the explanation for this is 2%. This is probably 2% of what what our budget should be. And even if we keep the policy in place, but I think we're just hurting ourselves by letting that policy remain.
Can speak to when the policy was implemented. It was, we had our whole different leadership team, and at the time, that was the standard practice. And so, yes, and we only implemented that policy about, I was gonna say, I think 4 maybe. And like I said, it was best practice at that time. And so we were bringing our previous policy was like from 1976. So we're bringing that up to best practice for 2021, 22, I think. And then, so to your point, that best practice has since evolved. So I think it would make sense for the policy subcommittee to take that on and have us bring it to the 2026, 2027 and future standard.
And as you said, it might not be a percentage, right? We might need to have some language that's a little more fungible than that.
Can certainly take that under review and have a discussion at the policy subcommittee level.
Ms. Massanetti, I recall that the budget subcommittee developed that policy and sent it over to policy. I'm not sure. I'm not 100% sure.
It came from our CFO and we
Yes,
reviewed it
yes.
and then brought it to policy.
Yes,
I don't think it needs to live in budget. I think that's a policy and it's something that, you know, Andrew, the Hennius law firm helped us navigate it. And so I think it just, to me, it served its purpose for its time and it just needs to be reviewed. I don't think it needs to live in budget. I think Miss Raquel she's the one who was like, your policy is way outdated. We need to do something about it. So we ran with it and then handed it over to policy, but
yes,
it wasn't, it doesn't have to live in budget.
I agree.
Can also go back and adjust it for inflation.
Yeah,
Taking our.
my only other comment on this slide is I think this, I'm glad you put assigned a number to the reimbursement. I don't think it should be a note. I think it needs to be something that is a topic of discussion because that's free money that's been given to the town. They didn't budget to receive it. They didn't count on it. It's money they're getting because of money we spent. And it should be clear that we're asking them to give it to us. Not just say, here's how much you're getting, but it should come back.
Yeah, I think we need to revisit that definitely in this presentation, with its own slide of, we broached this subject before. They seemed very receptive to it. I think we can have some more information for them. This is what we spent last year that's reimbursable. This is our plan for this year that's reimbursable. Here's some, timelines of when we expect to have this money. But we request these things to go into a restricted fund just to fund our capital improvements. It would be kept at the town, all those things. I think they'll be really receptive to that. I think they're really wanting data around it and dollars around it.
Yeah, I agree. I think it appeared to me that when we discussed it, they were receptive. I'm saying the same thing. I would call that out, maybe go from here to a slide just about that and say, here's a note. You can impact this number, all these numbers by sending that money back. And that's money that, again, doesn't increase the maintenance of effort, right? It's just $400,000 that you don't have to keep giving every year. You just give whatever that percentage is.
And we continue to leverage it. because whatever we spend becomes that is reimbursable and then reimbursable again. So I think they heard us. I really do think they're going to be receptive to it. I think that we just need to kind of like say, okay, when you accept our budget, accept that too.
Right. I think it
So I
would,
can do that.
it might be helpful if we're spending 1.1 for, on next year, can we, so if we take that 399 onto the next slide, can we
Yep.
take next year, you're gonna get back, here's how much of that 1.1 is reimbursable.
Sure.
So next year, you're gonna get whatever that number is.
Yep, so I'll
back.
create a slide,
Yeah.
impact of fund balance on the capital improvement plan in terms of
We
if,
should,
if it were pushed to, if it were pushed
Right.
to capital, if it's
Right.
ultimately, what, if it's spent on capital improvement projects with 35% reimbursement versus if it's spent on operations, then the next year, what's not available to us for continued capital improvement.
I think what they, well, if they don't do anything, what'll happen is they'll just sit in their reserve fund. Because they're not budgeting to spend it. But it would help, I would assume there's another 300,000 or so coming out of this 1.1 million. I'm sure it's not all reimbursable. But some amount is, so to start showing them that cycle. Give back the 400, next year you're gonna get 3 something, and it's gonna come back, and it'll keep you from having to give us more because you're paying the.
So it's not necessarily I mean, part of the conversation is if you don't do this, then we're not gonna have any money for the CIP in 27. But I think what really we want to show is the data 24, 25, 25, 26, what we spent, what's reimbursable, so that we can say, look, if we do this in 2026, 27, we'll have the money when we, because we're not going to have it, because we're going to have to use it for operations. But I think those hard dollars will go a long way. And then because that's what their questions are going to be. What kind of money are we talking about? And so to show that in a slide would be great. And then talk about if we don't do this, it's going to impact future CIP programs because we're having to use it for operations and we're not going to have anything available if we don't do this. So
I think the other thing, not another slide, but in case the conversation goes in this direction, Mr. Seeger and Mr. Pedraza, are you aware of like what other districts do in the state? I know I've had conversations with people from other school committees that the reimbursement from RIDE comes directly back to the school department. But I can't tell you who it is or how much it is. But I thought maybe that could be like one of those, you know, in, you know, so many of the districts in the state. And I know that the districts across the state do their budgeting in different ways than we do, but I think that would be a good thing to have handy to let them know. Thank you.
I just had a question about this slide of the years up there for the unaudited total. Is it supposed to be 25, 26? Or does that?
Well,
be-
at the beginning of this year.
Okay,
That
Yes.
was,
okay.
yeah, I can now, when we first created this, we did, and so the audit is now complete, which just came back.
Yeah.
The end of last.
So just like the audited total available at the beginning of the 25, 26 school year. How much we're using during the 25, 26 school year. So how much we have available to use and, talk about for our budget for 27, 26, 27. I just found the 25, 26 slash in the first box just a little confusing as far as like that's not our unaudited total for the end of this year, right? We're not gonna have 4.7 million.
Beginning. of this.
It's, yeah, I think that should be stated or made a little more clear on that.
Will do. Thank you. Okay, next slide, please. Challenges. So again, this would be this will be framed in terms of challenges that is shaping this budget. And again, they're not problems of anyone's makings, but they are ours to problem solve and navigate together as a community. So again, we have the reduction in state aid. We have the definition of community wealth. We have school choice options available in South Kingstown, and South Kingstown as a unique outlier. And then we have contractual obligations that are yet to be determined. Next slide. So in feedback from folks who were saying, well, let's show state aid, I couldn't find I just put it out there and said simplified. I mean, we're getting to average daily membership and factors and multiplied, and God bless you, math teachers, in terms of, function and times pi squared. So this was as simplified as I could ultimately make it. I do highlight again that each student, regardless of enrollment in the district, district charter, CTE, or state school, is included in this amount. However, the state starts with a per pupil amount of $13,850, which is far below most schools, average pupil cost. Again, it then multiplies that by community wealth, or what is referred to as the state share. The state share, and I won't read it to you, but I'll go into again how both of these forces are working a little bit against us, and actually in a larger percentage than even I originally found out. So again, basic state aid. Next slide.
I just had a quick question about
Yep.
you mentioned this a couple times, 7th in the state, like 7th in what?
We are 7th lowest in the state in terms of the portion that the state funds us in the formula.
So, yeah, okay.
So we are the 7th wealthiest. We are the 7th wealthiest municipality.
And so that translates to,
We
if
get
you look at
fed.
how much, if you have a chart, sort of a chart of how much state aid each community or school district got, we would be 7th from the bottom.
Correct.
Okay.
We are, yep.
But yeah,
I
from least amount,
calculate
so.
South Kingstown is the 7th wealthiest.
So it's
Town.
seventh wealthiest, so then.
What they're gonna pay for us. Yep.
Right,
They pay, so they'll pay us the least.
yep. Okay, I just want to make sure I understood that.
Who's number one? Jamestown. Jamestown, New Shoreham, Little Compton, Portsmouth, Charlestown, and Narragansett. Then us. Okay, so next slide, please. One more, sorry. Did I double? No, can you go forward one more? Okay, so reduction in state aid. I will want to point out that there is a incorrect number on there in terms of the total. That should be 5.3 in terms of total. I must have hit the wrong button. So in terms of the reduction of state aid, to put it, this is once again here, it is not enrollment based. As you'll see under high cost special education, we are losing over $300,000 in state aid in that category alone, compared to, had it been just in formula aid, that may have been something that we could work towards and absorb. So when we take all of this aid, all of our state aid, we actually have the largest percent reduction of state aid. Especially when you add in, although we know that non-public transport is actually a credit. When we factor that in, again, we're losing in non-public transports, even in credits, we're losing $60,000 right there. In addition to the numbers that were already being reduced. When it comes down to as a percentage of the state aid that we receive, $400,000, 400 plus puts us at a 7.7% reduction.
What are these columns that,
So I'm sorry, those are school years.
oh, okay,
So those are. Yeah, headers, sorry.
thank you.
Need to put the headers in. Thank you.
I think you alluded to it at the beginning, the total in the fourth column.
Yes,
is off.
yep,
That's what, okay,
That's what needs to go to 5.
yep, okay.
So again, if we take just formula aid, group home and high cost special ed, we're 6.92 reduction. But if we start treating non-public transport, if we treat that as a dollar amount and not a credit, we lose even more aid on this. So again, and so in terms of relative dollar amounts, only Providence, Central Falls and Woonsocket have lost more money in the governor's upcoming budget. And they're in the millions of state and double digit millions of percentage that they receive.
So knowing that information and knowing that we're really early in the process, because that's how South Kingstown works, are there potential for changes over the next month or two to?
Absolutely. So
Yeah.
this is the governor's recommended. This is not the adopted by the General Assembly, and ultimately that what they pass, depending on veto and all of that it has changed in the past, but it again, this is the recommended.
So that's also something that that our counselors can, in theory, help with, is communicating with our legislators to then communicate with the governor as to the impact of what this has. I mean, whether anything will come of that, but that's just something that they could take on as a way to help.
I can include that in a conversation with the reps and senators.
I think that's a huge point for them, for our delegation to take back to the State House, because how can South Kingstown be the highest percentage loser in the governor's budget? I mean, it makes absolutely no sense. We're not the wealthiest. We don't have the highest declining enrollment. So how come we have the highest percentage? So yes, Michelle, I think it would be great to have that conversation with our legislators and see if they can take that. I know it's hard. They're in a hard position. There's so many more delegates from or legislators from Providence than there is from South County, but still those conversations are definitely worth having.
I can't, I keep going back to, we're having this conversation and we're talking about funding formula and we're talking about being having the highest percentage. For the past couple of years, we have been part of the Learn 365. And with that comes, I think the first allotment was very close to 400,000, and then the next one was $350,000. And I bring that up because I can't help but think, are they looking at that? Are they including that in how they want to fund it? And I mean, also, while I got the mic over here, my brain is thinking about mandates. We have a lot of things that we're mandated to do by right? Where does the money come for that? We have to figure out where the money's coming from our budget, right? And so, it's just those things that make your brain start thinking about, okay, we say we need this much money to make it operable, but there's other monies that we don't see until the mandates start to actually fall on the table. So, I can't, but I go back to that Learn 365, and I don't know. maybe do a little bit more digging on that, because I
That-
also know that the town helps control that funding.
That doesn't come to the schools though. That goes to Johnny Cake, right?
It is intended for the, an educational hub in your community to support schools, right? It doesn't come to us, but the
Yeah.
town
So the governor
manages that money.
the governor puts in a different appropriation in his budget to fund that project. And it's different than when he's looking at funding the schools. So different pockets of money. So one really doesn't have to do anything with the other. I think it's a great thing that the governor does have this 365 program that brings educational resources to towns that need them. And I think he's trying to get one in substantially every town. You know, but good programs like that don't mean we don't have to also fund our school districts. So it should be a both, not either or. And again, even though he's doing good things educationally, there are other things that I don't agree with the budget, the governor on. He likes charter schools. There's a lot of push in that direction instead of on our public school districts. So, you know, you have to drill down in different areas of the budget. But I mean, if you want to talk more about it, we can. But again, we're hopeful though that the legislatures get also their kind of take on this. And at the end of the day, they will be the one that appropriate funds. So we still have some hope, cross our fingers, talk to our legislators that the legislatures will do something different than what the governor is proposing on this budget allocation.
So next slide, please. So the impact of school choice, again, we'll be highlighting that school choice is an option available to families and respect families' rights to choose. But ultimately that choice has a cost. And again, once again, not only in terms of transportation costs by being the second largest by landmass, is South Kingstown unique, but we're also unique. And once again, that we have multiple charter schools and a state school satellite campus in town. And that ultimately, you know, that most districts, surrounding districts do not face that ultimately their 5.1 or whatever percentage they're getting in state aid is ultimately leaving the district, whether that be through charter schools, which primarily are at the elementary levels. However, a large percentage there at the CTE level, as well as the state schools. Again, at this time, I'll put the state into that category as we do not have any students in terms of Rhode Island School for the Deaf. So again, it is that at this point, it is a choice option, it is accurately reflected as so. The other piece here is that 5.1 will go up once the FY27 rates are established. So in terms of estimates, we're using our current rates. Additionally, this is our current enrollment. And what I don't want to do is assume that things are going to go substantially up or down where we don't have a consistent pattern yet, as well as we're getting ready to open up, a new high school and another 100 and see the fruits of the community, the taxpayers, $150 million investment into our schools and what that will do to our out of district enrollment moving forward.
Sorry, the share rate's just is a formula, right? So are you saying we could determine what next year's share rate would be, or could we, or do we have to
Right.
wait for
We have
enrollment
to wait
numbers?
for
Okay,
enrollment numbers
All right.
and then districts per pupil costs.
okay,
Again, our per pupil costs are once again going to be inflated because of those transportation as well as tuition numbers. And again, the cost that quite frankly, every coastal community has in terms of an elevated per pupil cost. Next slide, please. straightforward here. Again, we're still waiting. We have still some factors in terms of our contractual obligations that are not yet settled. Our second largest bargaining unit, as well as major purchase services that affect the majority of students and have major price points attached to them. Again, that being transportation and food service.
Do we, maybe I missed it. Did we put a number on the transportation dollars somewhere here?
We did 11, we assumed 11%.
Okay, but do we,
in
I
our-
just think somewhere in here we should say, just like we did with the money going out to the CTE and charter schools, we put a number on that
Okay,
because those are two
our current
things that
cost.
I think, one, people who are some members of the public who dispute our need for more funding, leave those out of their calculations. And those two expenses are something that are outliers for our district. How much we're spending on CTE and how much we're spending on transportation. I think we should point, unreimbursed by the state. As Paul pointed out, mandates from the state to provide transportation and to pay for CTE. And they're substantially different. If you compare us, if someone wanted to compare us, for example, to Barrington, their transportation budget is the cost of 2 teachers for us. So I think it's part of the story of
Sure.
why, like you said, per pupil is high.
Great. Will include current costs.
And they probably will ask, and I don't think we'll know like what the percentage impact will be for entering these new contracts.
I do want to be a little bit careful in that in both cases of those purchase services, there are usually limited number of vendors who go in, and as we go out to bid and what is then assumed in a budget and what they know we can handle or have budgeted for. And it's just something that.
No, I mean, yeah, and I'm just saying, they'll
Oh.
probably ask the question,
Oh, yeah.
just, we gotta have that answer.
Yeah, we'll
Yeah.
we'll include those things in there, but that was another factor, reason why in some cases I didn't break things out. But happy to do so. Okay. Next slide, please. So our FY 27 request is again based on the following assumptions about state and federal aid. Again, we're level funding federal aid, and that's being optimistic. We're working with the governor's budget recommended, as disappointing as it is. In terms of our employment contracts, NEASC is our teachers and custodians are those are fixed costs, where paraeducators and administration are what our assumptions are. And healthcare and benefits, once again, our assumptions of 10% for healthcare and 5% across other factors. And then last but not least, other factors and assumptions is that we're using our requests from budget owners, from our principals and directors who will be in the audience, as well as we are assuming another loss of the local $600,000 transfer that we have in this current fiscal year. Next slide. This is the same. This is the same slide that you've seen now, and that has been submitted. There have been no changes. Next slide. Same thing with expenditures. Again, I'm happy to go into talking points, but we will be able to speak to what's in each one of these. What are the cost drivers? Where there are discrepancies, we caught one or made sure that we could account for one. In terms of the benefits that we presented earlier, that's different than what's presented up here. And that's because we weren't factoring in terms of benefits from grant funded positions. So those are happening, but through restricted funds. So that's going to be a little bit different in terms of why those benefits shifted in one slide, or those expenditures for one looks different than this in this slide here. And then next slide. So in summary, the causes of our approximate $4 million shortfall, we have unanticipated loss in state aid, not enrollment driven, the loss of the local transfer that the town was generous enough to give us last year, The contractual increases in terms of salaries, benefits, both those that are set and those that are still in flux or still need to be negotiated. And we have large scale anticipated purchase service cost increases associated with inflation. However, we are proud to present our FY27 budget that has no programs or activities or athletics or extracurriculars eliminated. However, in order to do so, we are requesting an increase in town appropriation of $2.5 million. We have in our request are already assuming a $600,000 plus in terms of whether it be through faculty and staff elimination and or breakage. That number is on the conservative side. We hope that that will go up, and that number may go up, and we will give updates to that factor as different employment actions are taken. But ideally, if that number were to go up, we would not want to reduce the town appropriation. We would want to reduce the amount of use for fund balance for operations. Because if we were able to reduce that fund balance for operations that we are currently scheduled to use $1 million on, we would be reinvesting those dollars into our school or into our capital improvement projects, making a long-term investment into that restricted fund when the state reimburses at 35%.
One thing, I think we need a different term for loss of local transfer. I think you mean that it's the loss of the restricted one-time only transfer. That's 608. That's probably too long of a title, but it needs to say something that special one-time only.
I would also suggest kind of framing it, it's not a loss. We knew it was a one-time only, so we shouldn't have been factoring it in, though it was factored in last year because it offset costs for us, so it does impact us, but to call it a loss sounds like it was a reduction, which it technically,
So
we knew it was a one-time only.
And they knew it was a one-time only, so they knew
It was our money.
I told them they were putting us in a structural deficit for next year,
Yeah.
so,
So give us
but,
our money.
yeah.
It's our
I mean,
money.
you don't have to say loss, but you can just say, special, one-time only transferred. I mean,
just
Are available.
leave it there.
yeah,
I'll find a way to reframe it.
Yeah.
We'll-
ask,
we'll do-
ask, Gemini.
Okay, and next slide. Would be and again, closing statements, and is what we ended with last year. And there'll be none, and off we'll go. So again, here we'll get into the the collaboration that we're facing this together, that we can find the solutions together. However, we believe that if we're to maximize the investment, the community's investment of up to $150 million, it needs to be reflected here. That investment in education, once again, needs to go to the operating budget and what happens in schools, not a school or a field. Thank you very much for input and suggestions as always, as well as catching typos and improvements.
I just want to say, I can see the effort that went into this and it looks great. And I love the slides, the animation, the pictures around them, I think, look very well done. And I actually kind of like it better than the children's pictures. I just think it's very cohesive, and it's a great presentation.
Thank you. We wanted to make sure that we didn't put anybody in a hard spot, as well. Like, whoa, wait a minute, I'm up there, or, oh, wait a minute, that person hasn't been here in a while. So, and putting it out there and not wanting to call out certain folks or schools. So thank you.
Anything else? Any other comments, suggestions? High praise? All right.
And I will say this is very well put together a presentation, so I think it will be well received and does explain things very well and as thoroughly and as transparently as possible. So that's what I know the town council wants to see from us, have a thorough, transparent review of the budget, and I think this does that.
Thank you. And we'll be, what we'll also do is we'll want to make sure that we have, I'll make sure that folks have copies of this in advance, as well as what was submitted to the town manager. So in terms of our budget request, so I would just, if folks need a copy of that and would like one that is not digital and would like a paper one, please let us know. So we'll get those to you in advance. As that, it is a significant document, but in terms of, what we're not doing here is we're not breaking out every single UCOA number. So in this presentation, however, what was submitted does have those things, and there might be questions. And so in terms of preparedness of questions that are going to be asked, I'll make sure that,
I think it's good to have it. I think they're going to be focusing on what you've presented. I think you've done a good job of showing the categories at a level that shows enough detail without every UCOA line. So, but I do think you're right. Have it in case somebody says, well, we didn't have the whole thing. So, but I don't think, but unless, I hope they don't get into the minutia of going line by line.
I don't think the town council will, but I wouldn't be surprised when they open it up to community comment. When a community member comes up and asks a question, they then put you on the spot. Answer Jim's question of such and such line item, and instead of saying, oh, I don't have that available, at least it's
we'll be at the
there.
ready.
The worst thing that they do is they're like, 2 years ago, you said, I have your presentation from 2 years ago. And you're sitting there going, I don't have it in front of me. I don't know what you're talking about, but. So I agree. The more information you can have available, the better. But you just never know what they're going to come up with.
Certainly. We'll answer those questions on the 15th and 16th as well. Once they propose, adopt on the 18th, and we'll see what we're dealing with. Because ultimately, we do not get into those conversations of the implications of acceptance of a level funding budget, which would be significant. District altering.
And that's when we remind them it's election season. Slipping that down. there.
But we live in a community that highly values education.
True. It's true. Our voting population
Yep.
does highly well.
Absolutely. Bonds that come forward for education pass by a wide margin in our community.
Yep.
So I think that that's a good thing, that they can fund our schools appropriately and be right in step with our community.
Yep, agreed. Should I make a motion to adjourn? Oh, are we voting on that?
No, I don't think you need to vote.
Do we need a vote on them?
Does say action. I don't know if we.
But no, we
I
don't.
don't think
We don't need to vote. He took our suggestions and we're good.
Okay, so I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, we're adjourned.